Dealing with someone with an avoidant mindset feels like standing in a storm that never seems to end. One moment they're close, the next they're gone. Silent, distant, unreachable. It's like watching waves pull back from the shore, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. In that silence, the mind starts to race. Were they ever truly there? Will they ever return? Or were you just a fleeting moment in their world, easily forgotten? But here's the truth. Most people with an avoidant mindset don't operate on emotions the way others do. Their distance isn't random, and their return isn't sudden. It's a process, a deeply ingrained pattern that follows a timeline. Once you understand this, you stop feeling lost in the uncertainty. You stop questioning yourself and thinking it was something you did, because this was never about you. It was always about them. The ancient Stoics taught a powerful lesson. Control what you can and release what you can't. They warned against becoming trapped by the actions of others and living life in reaction to those who waver. They understood that real strength comes from within, from a mind trained to rise above uncertainty. When you truly see the stages that avoidance goes through, you stop reacting to their push and pull. You no longer feel the need to chase, fix, or wait. Instead, you reclaim your power. Here's the hard truth. Their behavior is not a reflection of your worth. Their silence is not a verdict on your value. They are fighting a battle you cannot see, trapped in patterns they barely understand themselves. They run not because they don't care, but because truly connecting demands a level of vulnerability they aren't ready to face. Distance is their comfort zone, and so they leave, not realizing that what they're escaping isn't you, it's themselves. However, something will shift over time. As the space between grows, they will begin to feel the absence of what they once took for granted and will come back, not suddenly or dramatically, but in stages, slowly and subtly drawn back by a force even they may not fully comprehend. By the time they do, something will have changed within you. Once you understand this cycle, you stop waiting. You stop watching the clock, measuring their silence like a countdown to their return. You stop looking for signs and second-guessing every move. Instead, you rise above it. You embody strength, resilience, and self-worth. And that is the moment they truly feel the loss, because nothing unsettles an avoidant more than realizing that the person they once expected to be there has moved on. This is the moment of clarity, the moment you stop asking when they will return and start asking why you ever waited in the first place. You were never meant to be a pawn in their push-pull cycle. You were meant to stand firm, own your value, and walk forward with or without them. Before we dive into the stages they go through, before coming back, I want you to do 3 things. First, take a moment to acknowledge your strength, as choosing strength is the first step to freedom. Second, commit to your own growth, so you never lose sight of the wisdom that will guide you through this. And third, reflect on a mantra that reflects your power. Say it out loud, write it down, and own it. Something like, I am whole with or without them. Because every time you declare it, you take back your power. Now let's get into it. The key stages and timelines before they come back. Once you see the pattern, you will never see them or yourself the same way again. Stage 1, running from the fire. When they first create distance, it feels like relief, but not for you, for them. They breathe easier, as if they've just escaped a room that was closing in on them. It's not because they didn't care or never felt anything. It's because emotional closeness suffocates them in a way you may never fully understand. For them, the connection wasn't just love, it was pressure. Pressure to be vulnerable, pressure to show up fully, pressure to let someone see them beyond the surface they've carefully built. Avoidants are wired to fear emotional dependency. Closeness feels like standing too close to a fire. The warmth is inviting, but stay too long and it starts to burn. So they run, believing that space will bring them peace. In the beginning, it does. They convince themselves that leaving was the right decision, rationalizing and burying emotions that threaten their sense of control. This is where you might start questioning everything. How can they just walk away like that? Were they pretending the whole time? How do they feel nothing? But that's the mistake, assuming they feel nothing. The truth is, they do feel. They just don't process emotions the way you do. They escape discomfort, and the relief they experience isn't proof of indifference. It's proof of their inability to handle intimacy without fear. Yet they don't realize that relief doesn't last forever. You don't just erase a connection by running from it. You only delay the impact. As Seneca once said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Right now, your mind might be painting the worst scenarios, imagining them happy and thriving, moving on without a second thought. But that's an illusion. Their relief is not joy, it's avoidance taking its natural course. They are distracting themselves, not healing. And when distractions fade, reality sets in. Here's the part where many make the wrong move. The urge to remind them of what they left behind is strong. The need to reach out, prove your worth, and interrupt their illusion of relief can feel unbearable. But don't. If you chase, you only validate their belief that closeness is suffocating. You reinforce their fear instead of allowing them to face the consequences of their actions. Instead, take this time for yourself. They aren't thinking about you in this stage, and that's okay. That's not your burden to carry. This is where you turn inward, planting seeds of resilience. Control what you can, your actions, your thoughts, your growth. The ancient Stoics understood the power of discipline over emotion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This strength sets you apart. It ensures that when the illusion of relief fades, they come face to face with something they never expected: your absence. Their so-called freedom is a mirage. Right now, they believe they've regained control, that they've escaped the weight of emotional closeness, but time reveals the truth. The moment they realize that running didn't bring them the peace they expected, the next stage begins, and this is where everything starts to shift. Stage 2, the cracks begin to show. At first, they felt relief. Walking away gave them space, freedom, and a sense of control over their emotions. For a while, they truly believed they had made the right choice. They told themselves they needed this, that it was for the best. But now, something is shifting. The silence that once felt peaceful is starting to feel a little too quiet. The space they so desperately wanted is beginning to feel empty. Doubt doesn't hit them all at once. It creeps in slowly, like water seeping through tiny cracks in a wall. It starts with small things, passing reminders of you, echoes of conversations, flashes of memories they thought they had buried. Perhaps it's a familiar song, a phrase only the two of you used, or the absence of your energy in their daily routine. At first, they brush it off, telling themselves it's nothing, but the more they try to ignore it, the louder it becomes. This is where they start to question, did I make the right choice? For someone who avoids emotions, this stage is unsettling. They have spent so much time convincing themselves that leaving was necessary and logical, that they don't need connection. But now, Without you, reality is challenging that belief. The relief they once felt is no longer holding up under the weight of their thoughts. The freedom they craved is starting to feel like loneliness, yet they won't admit it. Not to you, not to anyone, not even to themselves. They will distract themselves, bury the discomfort, and push it aside as they always have. But deep down, something has shifted. Epicurus once said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of things." Right now, their mind is beginning to shift. What once felt like escape now feels like loss. What once felt like peace now feels like something is missing. This is the part where you might feel the urge to reach out. Maybe you sense the doubt in them, or perhaps you want to remind them of what they left behind. But that is the mistake so many make. If you chase them now, you disrupt the very process that is leading them back to you. You offer them an escape from their discomfort, and they will take it, running straight back into avoidance, convincing themselves all over again that leaving was right. Instead, let their doubt simmer. Let them wrestle with it. Let them sit in the silence they thought they wanted. The Stoics taught that true strength is found in restraint, in standing firm when emotions tempt you to act. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in overcoming it, said Epicurus. Right now, your greatest strength is in doing nothing, not out of pride, not as a game, but because their journey back is something they have to walk on their own. Here's the truth. They are not fine. They might pretend they are. They might even believe it for a while. But the cracks are forming, and those cracks will only widen with time. The doubt they feel now is only the beginning. It is the first sign that their relief is crumbling, that their mind is turning back toward what they left behind. But they aren't ready to face it yet. Not now, not in this stage. Let it happen. Let the silence do its work. What they don't realize yet is that this doubt is not a passing thought. It's the beginning of something much bigger, and soon they will have no choice but to confront it. Stage 3, when yesterday comes knocking. By the time they reach this phase, usually around the 3rd month since they walked away, something remarkable starts to happen. Doubt begins to transform into nostalgia, like a soft echo in a once silent room. The distance they worked so hard to create suddenly reminds them of what they left behind, causing them to glance back over their shoulder, wondering if they've lost something irreplaceable. In the first 2 stages, they felt relief and then uncertainty. Now those feelings merge into a quiet longing for the moments you once shared. It's not the overwhelm or suffocation they experienced before. Instead, their minds start to remember the warmth of your laugh, the comfort of your presence, and the joy in the simplest routines you created together. Perhaps they're driving past the cafe you both loved, and they catch a memory of you sipping your favorite drink. Or maybe they wake up one morning with a stray thought. I miss how they made me feel. At first, they brush these moments off, telling themselves it's normal to reminisce. But nostalgia has a way of lingering. It doesn't demand immediate action. It simply whispers that something once cherished is now gone. You might wonder how someone so determined to leave can suddenly feel drawn to the past. Shouldn't they be moving on? Didn't they decide they were happy alone? But remember, avoidant behavior isn't about a lack of emotion. It's about a deep fear of vulnerability. When they left, they believed distance would be the antidote to all those uncomfortable feelings, expectations, the risk of disappointment, the possibility of getting hurt. For a while, that gave them relief. Then came the void, and nostalgia ever so gently fills that void with memories that refuse to be ignored. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." For them, nostalgia is now that obstacle, and it's leading them to confront what they've tried so hard to suppress. You might question if this nostalgia is strong enough to make them return. If they're missing you, maybe you should reach out. Perhaps they're ready to talk. But here's the critical truth. Nostalgia alone usually isn't powerful enough to bring them rushing back. It's more like a seed planted in their mind, slowly taking root. If you interrupt this process, if you offer them an easy pathway to reconnect, you risk giving them the same comfortable escape from reflection they seized when they first walked away. Stoicism teaches the importance of mastering what is within your control and letting go of what is not. If you reach out now, you take on the burden of steering their emotional journey when, in reality, they need to come to their own realization that those memories aren't just random flickers. They're signs of something deeper they lost. Epicurus famously said, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments concerning them." Their current judgment is shifting. What they once viewed as necessary distance is morphing into a growing awareness that maybe, just maybe, the best parts of their life were tied up in you. Yet nostalgia often brings more questions than answers for them. Did I make the biggest mistake of my life? Was I too hasty? Could I ever recapture what we had? They may replay entire conversations in their head, searching for a clue about where things went wrong or how they could have handled things differently. But they're still not ready for real vulnerability. Admitting to you that they're experiencing these feelings would mean exposing themselves to the raw truth that they might have made a mistake. Instead, they will try to bury it with distractions, telling themselves that time heals all wounds. The irony is that the more they run, the more potent nostalgia becomes, nudging them during quiet moments, whispering that life felt richer when you were in it. This brings up another common question. If they're stuck in memories of me, does that mean they've changed? Change is a tricky thing. Nostalgia can open the door to change, but it doesn't guarantee it. It's simply the emotional spark that might lead them to reconsider their stance. They could, in theory, ignore that spark entirely, convincing themselves that looking back is an indulgence, that the past has no place in the future. But more often than not, nostalgia doesn't just disappear, it builds, gathering strength, fueled by every reminder of what they once had and now lack. So where does this leave you? If you rush in now, trying to force a resolution, you risk being a temporary fix to the discomfort they feel. Stoicism advises a different path. Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. This means continuing your own growth, maintaining the life and identity you're shaping in their absence. It may feel counterintuitive to let them stew in their own longing, but this period of nostalgia is laying the groundwork for genuine reflection, something only they can do. If you try to shortcut it by breaking your silence too soon, you may inadvertently allow them to avoid the very introspection that could inspire real change. Nostalgia is like the first warm breeze that hints at spring after a long winter. It doesn't instantly melt the ice, but it signals that a thaw is coming. They might not be ready to act on these feelings, and that's fine. The more important development is that they are feeling them at all. This sense of longing is a testament to the fact that you mattered, that the bond you shared wasn't easily replaced by their self-imposed isolation. In time, nostalgia can transform into something that propels them to face the reasons they left in the first place. If you've been standing firm, letting them experience the weight of that distance on their own, They'll find no easy way out but to confront the truth they've been running from. Stage 4, between fear and longing. They've entered a phase where the past is no longer just a fond memory. It's a compelling force pulling them back into your orbit. Yet they hesitate. It's as though they're standing on a bridge suspended between two worlds, one of longing, one of fear. After all the relief, doubt, and nostalgia, they're now caught in a tug-of-war between a desire to reconnect and the nagging apprehension that vulnerability might lead to heartbreak. Their emotions tell them one thing, their fear says another. This conflict creates a constant internal dialogue that can be exhausting to witness. You might notice them sending mixed signals, reaching out only to retreat. It's not that they don't know what they want. Deep down, they do. They want the closeness they once ran from, but they also carry a deep-rooted worry that if they come back, they'll end up in the same suffocating position they tried to escape. If you're on the receiving end of this confusion, it can be maddening. Why can't they just decide? What's stopping them from acknowledging their feelings? It's essential to understand that this indecision doesn't come from malicious intent. It comes from a fear so ingrained that they've learned to shield themselves at any sign of emotional risk. Epicurus once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." Right now, they are interpreting every memory, every pang of longing, every quiet moment of missing you through the lens of potential pain. The conflict is no longer a simple push and pull. It's a full-blown battle between heart and mind. They ask themselves, should I reach out? What if I go back and nothing has changed? What if I'm setting myself up to get hurt again? Those questions don't just vanish in a single epiphany. They linger, gnawing at their conscience and fueling the push and pull you might sense in their behavior. If they send you a brief message or like an old photo, it may not be a definitive step forward. It could be a momentary surrender to longing, immediately followed by a retreat back into avoidance. When fear rears its head, this hot and cold act can be frustrating, even infuriating for you. It's easy to think, are they toying with my emotions? Do they even care? The reality is that they likely care more than they're willing to admit. But caring feels dangerous. Admitting they miss you might force them to confront their own vulnerabilities, and that's the very thing they've spent years learning to evade. Marcus Aurelius offered a guiding principle. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is where you focus on what you can control. Your own reactions, your own emotional stability, your own growth. Trying to fix their inner conflict for them, or offering too much reassurance can actually prolong this stage, giving them yet another reason to avoid facing their fears head-on. They need to feel the full weight of this internal struggle without a safety net. Only then do they realize that running from genuine connection might be more painful than the vulnerability they dread. You might ask yourself, if I do nothing, won't they just move on? Ironically, doing nothing can be the very thing that propels them forward. When they sense that you're no longer available as a security blanket, their internal conflict intensifies. They can't simply drift on their own terms. They're confronted with the real possibility of losing you, and that realization can tip the scales in favor of reconnecting. Around the 3rd or 4th month, when nostalgia and emptiness merge, they start to see that their fears are no longer sustainable. The longing that once seemed like a whisper grows louder, competing with the defensive voice that told them they were better off alone. This is a messy stage filled with indecision and contradictory actions, but it's also necessary. They're taking the first steps toward understanding that isolation may protect them from hurt, but it also robs them of genuine connection. So if you're watching them wrestle with these doubts, remember that patience is more than just waiting. It's allowing them to undertake their own inner journey. The storm between fear and longing may be chaotic, but it is through chaos that clarity eventually emerges. When they finally make a choice, it will be one they've arrived at through genuine introspection, not coercion or convenience. Let them face that storm on their own terms. Only then will they find a reason strong enough to risk being vulnerable again. Stage 5. A toe in the water, afraid to dive. After months of distance, doubt, and nostalgia, they find themselves inching closer again, but cautiously. They still fear vulnerability, but the pull of missing you has become stronger than the comfort of their solitude. So they take the safest route, testing the waters. They won't dive back in, not yet. Instead, they'll send out feelers, subtle signs to see if the door is still open. It might start with a simple message, "Hey, how have you been?" Something casual and non-committal. Maybe they start interacting with your posts again, liking a picture, watching your stories, or leaving a comment that feels insignificant but carries weight. Sometimes they'll discuss it as practicality, asking about something they left behind or seeking advice on something they could easily figure out on their own. None of this is accidental. It's a calculated move, their way of gauging where you stand without exposing too much of themselves. Right now, their mind is tangled in a web of uncertainty. Are you still upset? Have you moved on? Will you welcome them back, or will you reject them? They don't have the answers, and their biggest fear is walking into a situation where they lose even more control. Avoidants don't handle rejection well. They retreat before it happens. That's why this stage is hesitant, filled with small, careful steps forward, immediately followed by moments of pulling back. This is where your response becomes more powerful than you realize. It's tempting to overanalyze their every move, to search for meaning in every message, every like, every small gesture. What does this mean? Are they coming back? Should I act interested or should I ignore them? But this is not the stage of certainty. It's the stage of testing. They are not fully ready to return. They are feeling out the possibility of it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." This is how you must be now, steady, composed, unaffected by their hesitations. If you react with too much excitement, they'll retreat, feeling pressured. If you respond with cold indifference, they'll assume reconnection isn't possible. The key is balance, acknowledging their presence without chasing it, being warm but not needy, open but not waiting. You might wonder, if I don't show enthusiasm, won't they think I don't care? But this isn't about proving you care. It's about proving you're not dependent on their return. There's nothing more magnetic than someone who stands in their own power, someone who doesn't sway in the wind of another's indecision. When they sense that you are calm, strong, and self-assured, it forces them to reevaluate their own instability. Patience is everything in this stage. They are dipping their toes in, but they are still afraid of the water. If you push, they'll pull away. If you resist, they'll question why they ever left in the first place. This is not a test you need to pass. It's a process they need to go through on their own. Stoicism teaches that true strength is in controlling what is within you, not trying to control what is outside of you. Your job is not to rush their realization, it's to hold your ground. This phase usually happens around the 4th or 5th month, a time when their nostalgia and internal conflict have built up enough to push them toward action, but not yet enough for them to fully surrender to what they feel. Think of it as a litmus test, not just for them, but for you as well. They're trying to see if there's still space for them, but you must also ask yourself, is this the version of them I even want back? Let them test the waters. Let them linger in their own uncertainty. Let them feel the weight of their own choices. In the end, they are the ones who must decide whether to step back or step forward. If they do choose to return, it should be because they see your strength, not because they sense you're waiting. Stage 6, walking the edge of fear and connection. Something has shifted. After months of running, doubting, and testing the waters, they now find themselves at a crossroads. The distance they once created, believing it would bring them peace, has only left them restless. The bundem silence that once felt like control has become a reminder of what they lost. Now, for the first time in a long time, they are facing something they've spent their whole life avoiding: vulnerability. They begin reaching out more, but this time, it's different. The casual small talk turns into deeper conversations. Instead of empty check-ins, they start bringing up old memories, moments that once meant everything, but were left behind in the wake of their avoidance. They might even hint at regrets, admitting in their own guarded way that they miss you. Some will be direct, finally voicing the question that has been haunting them. Do you think we could try again? For someone who avoids emotional depth, this stage is terrifying. Vulnerability is unfamiliar territory, and every step forward feels like walking across thin ice. They have spent so much time convincing themselves that they didn't need connection, that independence meant distance. But now, a new fear takes over. The fear of losing something real, something meaningful, something that mattered more than they were willing to admit. Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." This is the very essence of their struggle: opening up, allowing themselves to feel, daring to reconnect. None of this comes easily for them, but something inside them knows they have to try. They have to dare, because avoiding emotions hasn't given them the peace they expected. The more they fight it, the more they realize that running away was never the answer. You might be wondering, if they're finally coming back, should I just embrace it? Should I let them in completely? But this stage is as much a test for you as it is for them. How you respond will shape what happens next. Rushing in too fast can overwhelm them, sending them back into their defensive shell. Being too distant might convince them that they've already lost their chance. The key is balance, meeting their openness with warmth, without sacrificing your own self-respect in the process. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is where your strength matters most. They need to see that while you are open to reconnecting, you're no longer willing to fall into the same patterns that led to the separation. They need to understand that their return doesn't guarantee immediate acceptance. It requires effort, growth, and accountability. This can be an emotional stage, even bittersweet. They may struggle with fully expressing themselves, hesitating to say too much too soon. But the fact that they are even trying is proof of progress. They are beginning to see that the distance they created didn't erase what you shared. It only highlighted what they were missing. Now they are daring to face the very thing they once feared: real connection. This phase, which often happens after 5 or more months, is where the shift from reflection to action truly begins. It is no longer just about missing you. It is about deciding whether they are ready to face what comes with being close again. The key is patience. Let them prove through actions, not just words, that they are capable of something deeper. If they are serious about returning, they will show it. If they are still uncertain, they will hesitate. Either way, your role remains the same: to stand firm in your own strength, allowing them to come forward, but only on terms that lead to something healthier than before. Stage 7, the crossroads: stay or walk away. After months of silence, nostalgia, hesitation, and slow steps forward, everything now leads to this moment. They have reached a crossroads where there are only 2 choices: commitment or closure. The push and pull, the internal battles, the fear of vulnerability, none of it can remain unresolved anymore. They must decide: do they fully step back into the connection they once ran from, or do they walk away for good? This is the stage where everything becomes clear, not just for you, but for them. For the first time, they can no longer avoid the reality of their feelings. The illusion of control they held on to for so long has cracked, and they see things for what they are. The distance they created did not erase the bond. It only forced them to confront what they had been running from all along. If they choose to stay, something inside them has shifted. The fear of intimacy that once kept them distant is no longer stronger than the pull to be with you. They finally understand that real connection requires risk, vulnerability, and effort. More importantly, they are willing to act on that understanding. Their words will no longer be vague. They will come forward with clarity, honesty, and intent. They will acknowledge their regrets, admit their fears, and take meaningful steps toward rebuilding what was lost. Not through empty promises, but through action. The kind of action that shows they are ready to face what they once avoided. But what if they don't? What if, after everything, they choose to walk away? This can feel like the most painful outcome, but in reality, it is a gift. If they leave, it is not because you were not enough. It is not because you didn't matter. It is because they were not capable of showing up in the way that love requires. Their inability to commit is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their own emotional limitations. There is nothing you could have done to change that. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." Love is not about forcing someone to be ready before they are. It is about embracing what is real, not what we wish it could be. If they cannot meet you where you deserve to be met, then the answer is not to hold on. It is to let go, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You might wonder, what if I did something differently? What if I had just waited a little longer? But waiting is not love. Love is not about sitting in limbo, hoping someone finally sees your worth. Love is about choosing each other fully, without hesitation. And if they cannot make that choice, then they were never meant to stay. As Seneca reminds us, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. So what does this mean for you? It means freedom. Whether they stay or leave, this is the moment where you reclaim your life. If they stay, it is because they have chosen to rise above their fears. If they leave, it's because they were not strong enough to stand beside you. Either way, this is your turning point. No more waiting, No more wondering, no more questioning your worth based on someone else's ability to love you the way you deserve. You have walked through this process with strength, patience, and self-respect, and now you emerge from it not as someone waiting for answers, but as someone who already holds them. There is nothing more powerful than a person who has mastered themselves. Epicurus said, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." You have mastered yourself. You have held your boundaries. You have allowed them the space to return, but not at the cost of your own peace. That is strength. That is self-worth. So whether they choose commitment or closure, understand this. You are not losing anything. You are gaining clarity. You are stepping into the next chapter of your life, stronger and wiser than before, and that in itself is a victory. If you're here reading this, then you already know the truth. You don't need them to come back to be whole. You don't need their love to be enough. You already are. Now take that truth and carry it forward. Whatever comes next, you are ready.